Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Discmania Vanguard, a disc that was created in partnership with Kyle Klein. So the Vanguard is a fairway driver coming in at a speed 9, glide 5, turn 0, and a fade of 2. Let's go ahead and jump into the review by taking a look at the profile. First, it has a very gradual rise to the shoulder, and then just a really slight amount of dome on the flight plate. It's almost flat, but it has just a smidge amount of dome to it. And being a speed 9, the rim isn't very wide, so you can still get decent amount of distance without sacrificing very much control. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the flight of the Vanguard. And for slower medium arms, this is just going to be a very trustworthy fairway driver. I mean, basically, it's going to have a very hard finish if you throw it hyzer, and even thrown flat. You may get a straight flight out of it for majority, maybe 2/3 of the flight, but it's going to have a really hard, dependable dump. You really have to have a very fast arm to get the most out of this disc. As you can see with the forehand, it rides out straight for a little bit, gets a little bit of turn in that kind of mid-flight before again having that really predictable finish. And then when thrown on anhyzer lines, it's not going to hold very long before it starts to level itself out and then again fight all the way back. However, when thrown on an anhyzer line, I will point out you do want to give it some height to allow it to fight back. Because even though the Vanguard has some good late stability to it, if you put it on too much of an anhyzer line very low, it's going to do exactly that. It's just going to hold that anhyzer and just burn right into the ground without leveling itself out. But overall with the flight, again, this is going to be semi-overstable, at least for players, again, slower medium arms, great wind fighting fairway driver as long as you throw it with a little bit of hyzer or throw it flat. It's going to hold very straight, then just have that nice dependable finish even into mild to medium headwinds. For faster arms, this is something you're going to be able to hyzer flip and then get this nice kind of sweeping flex where you're going to get a little bit of turn, but then at the very end of the flight it is still going to try to hyzer itself out. One aspect of the Vanguard that I really like is because it'll hold that straight or slight turnover line immediately out of the hand, at least until that very late stability kicks in, it actually makes the Vanguard perfect for skip shots, as you're gonna see a little bit further on in the video. I love that it barely will get onto edge if you keep it low, so you can get some really nice forward penetrating flares. But now let's go ahead, take a look at how I would use the Vanguard on the course. This hole, you have a gauntlet of trees, and between the Mandos on both the left and right hand side, you just have 2 gaps. I'm going to opt on a forehand to hit that wider gap and just trying to do a good placement shot. And with just how straight the Vanguard is, it just makes short work. As long as you start it right on the correct angle and line, it can hit just about any gap that you want, and you know that it's going to hyzer out. This next hole is another good example that it has the late stability you need. You want to be able to have something that's going to push forward, but not far enough that it makes it into those bushes. You just know it's going to start hyzering just before it reaches the bushes. Now this next hole is a great example about how good the Vanguard is on those skip shots. You have a very tight fairway, very defined, danger all around, and a basket way tucked off onto the left-hand side. So I'm going to throw the Vanguard nice and low and as flat as I can, just so it hits the corner, barely gets on edge, and then gives you that really nice flare. Now you have 2 different ways to attack this hole. You have OB off on the left, and then you have a Mando to the right, and the basket is around the right-hand corner behind all those trees. A lot of wide open space. You can either A, into a headwind, take the Vanguard on just the high hyzer route, completely negating the wind, or you can trust the stability in the Vanguard and throw it flat and just know it's not going to turn over into the OB and it's going to hyzer back. Now I keep mentioning the Vanguard is good in the wind. Well, here is an extreme example. Now when it comes to Lefty Lines, I wanted to put the Vanguard up against a staple of the disc golf market when it comes to those semi-overstable fairway drivers, and that is the Innova Thunderbird. Even though I don't have the fastest backhand, I will say I did still notice a difference between the two. The Vanguard held straighter just a little bit longer versus the Thunderbird. I mean, it held a very similar line as you can see, but it just kind of came out of that straight flight sooner. It just started to hyzer out a little bit sooner, and you're going to see, I think, more of an example of that here when it comes to forehand. Vanguard gets a nice little bit of turn in the mid-flight and then has that nice stable finish versus the Thunderbird. I even put it on a little bit more of an anhyzer angle to start, and it just fought out of that turn almost immediately. So overall, I feel like these two are pretty comparable to each other. It's just the Vanguard out of the box is going to fly more like a seasoned Thunderbird. So if you're looking for a straighter Thunderbird where you don't have to really season one in for a while, I would suggest looking at the Vanguard. It gives you a nice and straight flight for about 2/3 to 3/4, and then just as it slows down, it has just, again, that very predictable overstable finish. Whereas for me, the Thunderbird, very similar flight, but it just starts to hyzer out just a little bit sooner. Instead of getting about 3/4 of the flight before it starts to hyzer, it's probably closer to about 2/3 of the flight. So overall, I'd have to say the Vanguard is a very fun and very good fairway driver. Nice and controllable. I think players of just about all skill levels are going to be able to make use out of it. Well, thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed enough to purchase the Vanguard for yourself. If you did, be sure to visit GreatLakesDisc.com. Use promo code LEFTY at checkout. That way you save 10% and you help support the channel. Also, go ahead, follow me on Instagram. See all this kind of shenanigans that I get into now as we're getting into the winter months. Thank you again. I greatly appreciate all your support. This channel would not exist without all of you. So thank you very much. Till next time, keep banging them chains.